Welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us. Get to our guest, Jamieson Welsh, here just coming up here in a minute. Also, Mike Babcock from TMZ Sports coming up at the bottom of the hour. Of course, we're talking about Mark Stevens. Banned from going to any NBA game for the entire year next year, including the playoffs. He was fined $500,000. And we're also taking calls at 257-5396. Let's squeeze in a quick call here before we get to Jamieson. Let's go to Dan. Dan, what's up?
Hey, Dan.
Greetings, JD and Brian. I appreciate you taking my call. But in regards to what you folks are discussing, I don't think a lot of you are understanding the tax math. Assuming that he is worth $2 billion and that he's going to pay $500,000 to charity, that is 1/4,000th of his wealth.
And
now,
I agree.
Most of the time when you have this type of wealth, you've got it all sheltered in tax trust. Now, accordingly, this $500,000, when taken off his taxes, is going to be a plus for him. He'll have very little income.
Okay, and Dan, I agree. Listen, Dan, we agree. This is a slap on the wrist.
We know that philanthropy is a tax write-off.
But here's what I'm saying, though. He should be donating millions and millions of dollars to Kyle Lowry, to the Raptors, to the Golden State Warriors, and to NBA organizations that need help. That's what I think he should do. So at least somebody could make out on this and turn this into a positive. And this is also a good thing, Dan, because in the future, hopefully a fan will think twice before they put their hands on somebody.
Or he could put some money into fixing Skid Row because it's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. It's 2 blocks away from the Staples Center.
Yeah, how about fixing up downtown Oakland? But you see what I'm saying, Dan? I agree.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. But when we have penalties and punishments these days, whether it be in our schools, our politicians, and in this case, Stevens, it needs to hurt.
I agree.
$500,000 for him. He'll spend that on a party.
Let me say
we won't be invited to.
Listen, Dan, from a financial standpoint, I agree with you 100%.
Hey, you don't know that.
But
you don't know who we know.
Well, here's the thing, Dan, okay? Dan, this is a huge embarrassment for the rest of his life. He will be tarnished and remembered about this for the rest of his life. Keep in mind, he's a partial owner of the Golden State Warriors.
And it's going to be a social hit that he can't even sit courtside.
Yeah, he will always
at Warriors games.
I tell you, Dan, forget about the money. He will always be remembered for being this jerk, for being this guy who decided to put his hands on an NBA player. That is invaluable. You can't put a price on that.
I disagree. I
All
had
right.
a politician tell me one time, Congressman Pete Hoekstra from Michigan, where I'm from, always said, all publicity is good unless you're caught at a rest stop with a 5-year-old boy. So after a year or two, people forget. Yeah, the media will bring it up once in a great while.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something.
Sure.
I appreciate the call, Dan. I'm going to tell you something. I hope you're wrong. I hope we don't forget what this guy did. But if he donates a lot of money to charity over the course of the next year or so, then I think we can forgive. Let's ask what this guy thinks. He is our hoops guru. Of course, he's with Drive Time Sports. He joins us every week, and we're so glad to have him. That would be Jamieson Welsh. Jamieson, how are you?
Doing well, fellas. Thanks for having me, as always. Definitely appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, Jamieson, before we break down the game, I want to get your thoughts on this, even that last caller. What do you make of this whole situation? Do you think the NBA responded properly? Do you think the punishment is fair?
I don't think the punishment is fair. I think it should have been a lot more severe. There has to be an example made of people who sit in the front row, sit in the crowds when it comes to touching and putting their hands on the athletes and players and coaches, et cetera, especially in a manner like that. And also, you got to think of it like this, too. If Jay-Z would have did that to someone, it would have been an uproar. Like, and we didn't know who Stevens was until people did some background information.
Mm-hmm.
If it was Jay-Z or somebody at that front row games or Chris Rock, and he would have put his hands on a Raptor or a Warrior, I mean, let's say if Jay-Z pushes Marcus Gasol, then what? You know, I mean, you're talking about a whole different thing. It would have been on every news station in America. This is only just on ESPN and Fox Sports. It could have been a lot deeper than that, and it should have, because this is a situation where you have somebody literally pushing an NBA player and then cussing at him. After that, there's no need for that. I thought I thought this fine should have been 7 figures at least, and the penalty should have been a lot more severe. 1 year, not a big fan of that. And also, he's part of ownership. There has to be you have to be better behaved. If you're part of ownership, you're sitting front row, you're acting like that. I'm not rolling with that.
Not only that, but what if Kyle Lowry had responded to him angrily and gotten himself kicked out of the finals? Then Mark Stevens is basically guaranteeing himself and his team that he owns a championship.
No, not necessarily. You jump a little bit too far right now. It's a little too much dip on your chip. However, with that being said, if let's say Kyle Lowry puts hands on him.
Okay.
Now, we know Stevens has more money than Kyle Lowry has. I mean, Lowry's been heavily paid over his career. That's a whole different can of worms right there. So it's a lot. Nothing good comes out of that. Whenever you put your hands on someone when you don't have to, you're not forced to, nothing good comes out of that. With that being said, in the series, if Kyle Lowry does something to get suspended, the Raptors still have enough guys that are playing at a high level at the moment to take care of business, especially if Golden State's not going to be healthy. That's a different story.
Jameson, let me ask you a question, because in my personal opinion, this has nothing to do with race, what transpired last night. To be honest with you, and I can't get in Mark Stevens' head, I don't think that shove or push or whatever you want to call it had anything to do with the color of Kyle Lowry's skin, and I think it had everything to do with the fact that this is a guy with a ton of money who's sitting front row, who's an idiot, who thinks he can do whatever he wants to do because he's a partial owner of the Golden State Warriors. I think he's a moron. JD seemed to think that LeBron James' statement had racial connotations, and I'm not about to go that far. I just disagree. I didn't interpret it that way. I think what we have here, and we had a caller who called in last segment, who seems to think that if it was a white person, a white player, and it happened to a white player, none of this stuff would have happened. And I'm going to disagree with that. I don't think this has anything to do with race, and I think it has everything to do with an idiot that was sitting front row with a lot of money who thinks he could do whatever he wants to do, and I don't think it had anything to do with Kyle Lowry's skin. Now, JD, tell me why you disagree with me, and then I want to hear Jameson's response to it, because you think that there is some race to this, right?
No,
to LeBron James comments. Anyway.
I think that if Gordon Hayward or Marcus Gasol was the one that was pushed, I don't think LeBron James would have reacted as aggressively as he did.
What do you think about that, Jameson?
I severely disagree. For those that don't realize, LeBron James just stepped down from being the head of the Players Association. He's the guy that, even though he has a lot of his own intentions and a lot of things, he's always looking out for players, whether it's situations like this, whether it's other situations. Even in Utah, when Russell Westbrook and the fan got into it up in Utah, and there's some things said, and the guy got banned. LeBron's always looking out for other players as a whole first, not necessarily himself or something that may have racial implications. Now, I will say this: if it was a black celeb touching a white player like that, it would have been totally blown up. It would have been a totally different situation. So, again, whenever you have a person that's sitting courtside pushing a player like that, you're going to have problems no matter the race. Now, there's certain combinations of race that's going to make it bigger than what it should be or bigger than what it is, and vice versa, but it's going to be an issue no matter what.
Okay, so let's talk about the punishment. I know you said you disagree with it. Now, I disagree with it as well, and if they gave him a lifetime ban from going to an NBA game, I would have been okay with it, and I would have felt bad for the guy. However, I'm going to say this. If he reaches out and donates a ton of money, not just to Kyle Lowry, to his, to some of his causes, but to other players on the Raptors, and maybe he does some great things for the Golden State Warriors as far as donating more money to charity. This is all he said in his statement, and obviously this is not enough. Mark Stevens said, "I take full responsibility for my actions last night at the NBA Finals, and I'm embarrassed at what transpired." He also said what I did was wrong, and there's no excuse for it. Now, obviously, that's not enough, right? You got to donate a lot of money. I think if he does that, and if he truly shows that he's sorry, I don't think it should define him the rest of his life, and I think I would be okay with that 1-year suspension. Do you still disagree with that?
I would like to see him removed from the NBA for a while. I'm not sure what the years you want to put on it. For life is a long, long time, but I think multiple years is definitely in the cards here. But also, here's the thing. I would like for him to be like, you know what, I messed up, to make this somewhat right, or to, hey, I messed up, let me try to help things out a little bit. Reach out to Kyle Lowry. Reach out to a couple guys on the Warriors, like you mentioned earlier. Donate to places close to the arena that they're about to leave soon. There's possibly 2 games left in Oracle. The area around Oracle Arena is not too great. You're deep in East Oakland. That area does need some funds to help with a lot of different things. I would like to see that happen. I'd be more of a fan if that happened, because here's the thing. He's part owner. You can go to a game. You can be in a suite and no one can find you. Especially at the new stadium, they're going to have a boatload of suites. He can be at a random suite that a camera can't find.
Right.
So that's going to be what it's going to be. At the end of the day, I'd rather see him make a difference and be like, hey, don't do this. Don't do this. If you're sitting courtside or you're sitting in the crowd, this is what you don't do. I'd like to see that more than just some random prepared statement and a small to him fine.
So what I'm hearing from you is you would be okay with maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, because life is a long time. I mean, life is life. I mean, that's kind of a lot, especially when the guy has ownership in the ball club. However, I would like to see it made as an example, because $500,000, most people who are sitting courtside, $500,000 is not a lot to. If you see all the people who sit at courtside, especially in the big market teams, $500,000 is not a lot of money to those people. So I think it hurts more when you have to go out of your comfort zone and learn and do things that you normally don't do, like getting involved in the communities that you normally don't go to, like reaching out to people that you normally wouldn't reach out to. I think that's more of a situation that would be beneficial to more people than just a $500,000 fine and a year suspension.
We're going to see what this guy is made of, and we're going to see what type of person he really is in the next few months. Because if he just throws money around to a few different causes, doesn't get out in the community, doesn't speak up, doesn't want to be made an example of, then I agree with you. But if he does do more than that and he is really involved, then I think he does deserve to come back in a few years. But we're going to find out. We're going to see what happens. I think the initial reaction was, well, we're just the Golden State Warriors. All they did was what they had to do. All they said is, well, he's not coming back for the NBA Finals this year. I thought that was ridiculous. That was a horrible response.
Well, here's the thing. I'll put it this way. If he shows any kind of remorse, I'm cool with whatever he does, in terms of if he decides to contribute in other ways and make things right. If he doesn't, I wouldn't be mad if the Warriors said, you know what, thank you, but no thank you. We'll have somebody buy you out of your ownership and we'll move right along. I wouldn't be mad at either thing.
And that's probably in his agreement too as an owner. I like a lifetime courtside ban or a top 3 rows ban, but probably a 2-year actual ban from the game. I agree that a lifetime ban from the game is too long. I
think that's enough, and I actually agree with LeBron James' comments. And let's talk about Kyle Lowry for a second, because I think we need to. Besides the fact that he had a wonderful game yesterday, he was all over the place, and on that specific play, he was doing what you need to do as a player. He was doing his job. He was hustling and doing what he could in that play for his team. He did that the entire game, by the way. He was fantastic. But I got to tell you, I think he reached 2 new levels, 2 new notches, in my opinion, just on the way he handled this whole situation. He didn't lose his cool. He didn't retaliate. He talked to the referee about what happened. He showed a lot of restraint. He continued to play and do what he needed to do for his team to win. And then in the press conference, I thought he was very eloquent, and then he did an interview with ESPN. I have a ton of respect for this man and the way he handled that situation. Got to tell you right now, I think there are half of the professional athletes out there, maybe more, would not have handled it in the professional way that he did.
I definitely disagree with that. I would say most would have handled it in that situation. I think that a lot of guys it's part of the job. Even though no one wants to talk about it, as a player, you can't go into the stands, you can't react to things like that. We saw a situation in Utah earlier this season with Russell Westbrook and the fan that got banned. Russ did the right thing. These guys are trained a lot. It's a lot better now than it's ever been before, because we've had situations like the Mouse in the Palace. We've had Vernon Maxwell going to the crowds. We've had other players going to the crowds. This day and age is a little bit more different, especially when you have a lot of guys are more media savvy and trained a little bit differently than they were before. So going in the crowd is bad for your brand. No one's going to do that.
I'll tell you, though.
No one's going to put their livelihood in situations, because once you do that, your situation is a lot different than it was before.
Especially with how much money they make in that stage being the NBA Finals. Yeah. Maybe in a regular season game,
right?
The reaction would be
not
different.
That. Here's the thing. The reason why I say that is this. The moment you go into the crowd and make a situation happen, it changes your whole perspective. It changes how people view of you.
Well, Steven Jackson is a perfect. I got to tell you, though, Jameson, I don't want to hear from Steven Jackson when it comes to this issue. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. He punched a fan. He punched a fan in the face. And I understand that there were fans that were throwing stuff on the floor, whether it be a beer bottle or a cup. Steven Jackson is the one that punched a fan and went into the stands and escalated that situation and made a horrendous decision.
Well, he's not the one that threw a bottle of beer at someone that was sitting down on the score table. However, have you ever been to Detroit, Brian?
Yes, I have. It's a rough place. I'd say Detroit and Philadelphia are probably the 2 most brutal places to play.
So if you're in Detroit and it's just your squad of guys versus the crowd full of people, you can't go in there trying to handshake and talk peace. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, at that point in time. Now, I'm not saying what he did was right because, whenever you
By the way, he also punched the wrong fan. He also punched the wrong fan because he's a Nimrod. He punched the wrong person.
I'm not going to call anyone a name, so that's not fair to him. At the same time, he has apologized for that. He has moved on from that. So I think he should get that respect for that because that was something that happened almost 15 years ago.
It happened a long time ago, but the point I'm trying to make is he is not the guy I want to hear talk about this sort of thing. In fact, he's the last guy as far as one of these former players talking on TV about this situation because, look, I understand it was one night he made. And Steven Jackson doesn't exactly have the best reputation of having his head screwed on right. He just doesn't.
Okay, but he is hired by the networks to talk about these things.
I understand. I'm just saying I think he's the last guy that should be.
Of all people who have experience in it, he's the kind of person you want to hear from because he's been there, he's made a mistake. You do kind of want to hear where he's coming from because he's the guy in the craziest brawl of my lifetime. I wasn't around in the early 80s and the 70s and the 60s, so I can't speak on that. But the craziest brawl of this generation, he was a part of it for better or worse, and the league has changed from that. That won't happen again.
I certainly hope not. I would never say never. We all hope
it won't happen again. We saw the damage it did. It ruined the Pacers franchise. It changed Ron Artest's whole career. It even changed Jermaine O'Neal's. I mean, Ron Artest had a documentary that came out last Friday that explained a lot of what happened.
Was it good?
That won't happen again.
I haven't seen it.
It's on Showtime. It's really good.
It is good?
But the Mouse and Palace will never happen again. But yes, everyone's lives changed that night. Everyone's lives and careers changed that night, and that will never happen again.
Well, unfortunately, you make one bad mistake in your life, and this isn't just about basketball. This is in life. You make one horrible mistake, it could change the course of your life, and then things like that happen every single day. It could be just getting into a car and texting somebody, and then, boom, your life has changed forever. You get into a car accident, God forbid you hurt somebody or you hurt yourself.
Jameson, will Kevin Durant play this series for the Warriors?
I don't think so. I don't. I thought Game 4 was the trigger comeback date. When they said the team doctors didn't like how he looked, that kind of gave you a sign like, yeah, that's probably about it. Also, he had an ice bag on his lower leg last night when he was reading everyone before they came into the locker room. It was kind of odd where it was placed at. It was placed a little bit lower than the calf area. But, hey, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to play on radio.
You're a basketball doctor.
No, I don't play those kind of games. I don't assume anything because – that's a totally different situation. However, with everything going on, I don't think he plays only because he escaped an Achilles injury. And we know what Achilles injuries do for NBA players. It's almost like a death sentence in a sense.
Yeah.
You're never the same after it. He's a guy that has a lot of great basketball ahead of him. And if that's not an injury you want to come back early from. If you have a serious calf injury or an Achilles strain, you don't come back early from that because you're more susceptible to have the rupture or the tear of the Achilles. And that's something no one wants. So I honestly, if he's not ready now, I don't see him coming back in the series.
And Kerr said that Klay Thompson's playing in Game 4. What percentage do you think he'll be playing at? And do you think he'll be effective? And do you think he'll play for what's your estimation for is the length of minutes he's going to play?
75 to 80%. I mean, the hamstring's a hamstring.
Right.
The only issue with him, they're going to shoot it up and do all the therapy they need to do with it. However, the only issue with a hamstring is once you've strained it, once you pulled it, it can go at any time. That's the thing. So it's not like a situation where it's going to be painful throughout the game. Everything could be going just fine for him, and then all of a sudden, boom, and then it's over. Like Chris Paul last year in Game 5 of the conference finals. It could be a situation like that. So you just never know. With hamstrings, they're very tricky. There's really no timetable on it. He can go smoothly for the next 3 or 4 games, or it can literally go out in the first quarter, and there's nothing you can do.
Okay, so the Raptors are up 2-1. They've looked pretty good. They shot 17 of 38 from 3 yesterday, which I don't think they're going to do again tomorrow. I think that's not going to happen. With a healthy Klay Thompson and Steph playing well, can the Raptors win this series, or are the Warriors going to come back and win this thing in 6 or 7?
If Kevin Durant doesn't come back, it's going to be very difficult for the Warriors to win the series. And the way the Warriors are dropping like flies, it's kind of difficult to count on them because Kevon Looney's a really good guy for the Warriors for what they do. Really good rotation player. When they don't have him, it throws their rotations out of whack. They have to play, Drebko more. They got to play Bogut more. They have to rely on DeMarcus Cousins more. And that's just not been a recipe for success for this series. They've had their flashes, but you really don't. The longer those guys have to play, the worse are, you are. So I really don't think that's a good situation. They just have so many different lineup issues. When you're missing two front court guys, I mean, Looney has started games for them in this postseason. You're missing Durant. That's tough to overcome because now your rotations are out of whack in general because certain guys you have come in for some of your backcourt players now play in the front court, and it's a bad situation, especially on defense. Their defense has been impacted, especially transition-wise, because there's so many different new pieces on there. So if you're missing shots like they have been the last couple of games, you see their defense has been severely impacted by that, and that's why Danny Green's hitting 6 threes and Van Vliet's hitting threes and Lowry's hitting threes because the transition defense has been pretty poor overall in this series outside of that big 20-0 run in the middle of game 2.
So the offense is very, very movement-based, and with Klay Thompson's hamstring injury, will that be affected because the offense is so movement-based and they're always moving around and they're rolling off of screens, et cetera? Will that have an impact on Klay Thompson when he comes back?
There was a stat, I believe Steph is number 1, C.J. McCollum was number 2, I think Klay was number 3 in terms of distance traveled in the playoffs, in terms of running and just all the steps you log in the game. So it's not just offensively with Klay, it's defensively.
Right.
He's a guy that can guard a lot of different people, whether it's Kawhi Leonard, whether it's Pascal Siakam, whether it's Van Vliet or Lowry. He can guard a lot of different players. So, it's not just on offense he moves around a lot. On defense, he's moving through picks. He's chasing guys. He's always in the mix. It's really difficult to key in where he may or may not get hurt. But with that being said, it's the finals. If you're able to go, you got to give it a shot. And that's what he's doing. You got to respect him for doing that if you're able to play. I don't think Kevin Durant's able to play, so I hope no one's judging him regarding missing these games. I also think he can play. I don't think it's an option for him to play, unfortunately.
So reading between the lines, you are predicting that the Raptors win the NBA championship this year.
Yeah, from what we've seen and what we have, I do think so, especially with having home court. I don't think they'll lose another game on their home court. I mean, I think Golden State wins tomorrow at home, but the way this series is going, Golden State just doesn't have enough guys. I mean, they're running out of guys. Any kind of foul trouble throws their rotation severely out of whack. I think Toronto has the upper hand right now, and with the way their role players are playing, it would take something severely drastic for me to change my opinion because their role players are confident right now. Marc Gasol, even though he doesn't have great numbers every game, is confident. Danny Green is very confident right now, almost too confident right now. Van Vliet has been confident since the middle of last round. They just have a certain edge about them that we didn't see earlier in the Bucks series, but we see it now. I think they're the better team. If we're judging teams right now for who's available and who's not, I have the Raptors winning this series.
If you're just joining us, Jamieson Welsh from Drive Time Sports. He is our hoops guru. Okay, Jamieson, I want to change topics real quick. Stick with basketball, but let's talk a little UNLV for a second. Moses Scurry, as you know, he is a UNLV legend who helped bring a championship here in Las Vegas back in the day. So I want to read to you something.
I read it. You don't have to read it, Brian.
Okay, well, I want to read part of it for our listeners, and I know you've read it. But basically, long story short, he's criticizing UNLV. He talks about how Juwan Howard was hired at Michigan, and he says, I'm paraphrasing here, you have so many great players at UNLV. Why is it that you don't do the same thing? He says, I'm sick to my stomach. You pass up all these great players who played here. And, basically he's upset. He's angry. He says he apologized to those ex-Rebel greats for not getting an interview. What do you say to this? What's your reaction to Moses Scurry blasting UNLV for not hiring a former Rebel?
So first things first, when you win a national title at a school, you have the right to pretty much say whatever you want about a coaching situation that the school hasn't been playing up to that caliber since you've been there. So I understand where he's coming from. He's passionate about UNLV basketball. He's obviously frustrated with the current situation. We haven't been in the postseason in a while. I get it. However, Juwan Howard, people talk about Juwan Howard being a Michigan guy. People don't bring up Juwan Howard being an assistant coach for the Miami Heat for the last 7-8 years. Even when he was playing on the Heat, he was pretty much a de facto assistant coach. So he went to Michigan. No, he was a NBA assistant coach that interviewed for a handful of NBA head coaching jobs. So he was more than qualified to be the head coach. A lot of people talk about Stacey Augmon, and I'm not going to get to that on over there because we don't have enough time for that. I will say this. They have the UNLV and the administration when it's come to coaching decisions, they have messed up. I thought Reggie Theus should have got the job over Dave Rice when the situation was there. You can make an argument over Stacey Augmon over Marvin Menzies. I mean, looking how Menzies turned out, I don't think Augmon could have did worse. But with that being said, when you look at jobs, you look at the job available. You want to get the best available candidate, not necessarily someone that went to the school. You want someone that's going to do the best job no matter where they went to school at. This time around, it should have been Mike Miller. We all know that. We'll give T.J. Otzelberger some time. I don't think it's going to work out, but that's a different story for a different day. At the end of the day, people have to understand these old players are just like fans.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what you said surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
You don't think it's going to work out with T.J. Otzelberger? Go ahead.
Even with David Jenkins?
I don't, because so here's the thing. There's been several kids, even in this class, that have gone to bigger schools that he has flat out refused to recruit. How does a kid go to TCU and he was dying to go to UNLV and you don't even recruit him? How does that happen?
Yeah.
Like how? And if you say, okay, so my thing is this. I understand he wants to run and gun, shoot a lot of threes. But in this conference, you've got to be able to defend. The coaches are too good in this conference to be one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. There's too many good coaches in this conference to be one-dimensional. And if you're playing subpar defense in this conference, you're going to get eaten alive.
All right. Fair enough. That's a fair explanation. All right. Hey, Jameson, I always appreciate it, man, when you take some time to call in. Always love your opinions. You are, I guess, a vast basket of basketball knowledge. Always appreciate it. Why don't you give out that information? How can people follow you?
Appreciate y'all. On your show once a week, on ESPN 1100 once a week, various 1340s around the country. Also 1480 in Nebraska, and on Twitter at @Jameson with 2 E's. And, yeah, that's about it.
Jameson, thank you for your time, my friend. Appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week, okay?
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks a lot, Jameson.
There you go. Jameson Welsh from Drive Time Sports joining us. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will continue the sports conversation with Mr. Mike Babcock from TMZ Sports. I know he certainly has an update when it comes to all this stuff that transpired on the court yesterday. And, gosh, some crazy news. Vernon Davis, interesting story that I want to get to with him coming up next. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDWN.